All right, we have 4 o'clock, and I think we've worked out many of the tech kinks. Seeing no one that's telling me to slow down, let's call the meeting to order. If we should encounter an emergency situation, we will exit the building from the lobby. There's 2 sets of doors. If for some reason those exits are not available, there's also an exit behind council here. Our muster point is located near the gazebo in Lions Park, and if we are evacuated for any reason, we will not re-enter the building until we're given an all clear from staff. Next, we'll move into our land acknowledgement. Councillor Dakin.
Thank you. The town of Sylvan Lake respectfully acknowledges that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory, home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. These lands are traditional meeting grounds, gathering places, and traveling routes for many nations, including the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Métis, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today, and those who have gone before us. We acknowledge and thank all the many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, whose footsteps have marked the lands for centuries.
Wonderful, thank you. Next, we would normally move into open microphone, which is an opportunity for residents to share their feedback with council, but tonight we have no one signed up. We will give another opportunity for that at 5 p.m. if there is anyone that enters for that purpose between now and then. Next, we'll move along to adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda? Ms. Phillips.
No, there are no additions or changes. Thank you.
Excellent. Would someone like to make a motion? Councillor Rilling.
I move the adoption of the agenda.
Excellent. Seeing no further comments, all those in favor and opposed, and that is carried unanimously. Next, we'll move into the consent agenda. Consent agenda is a way to increase meeting efficiency. We've got a number of items that have been marked with an asterisk that are recommended by administration to be moved into the consent agenda. Council, if there's anything you'd like to have extensive debate or have questions on, please let us know before that motion's being made, and we will remove them from the consent agenda at that time. So council, with that, is there any items you'd like to see removed? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion? Councillor Dakin.
I move that the 2025-0826 regular meeting of council meeting minutes be approved as presented, that the 2025-0902 committee of the whole meeting minutes be approved as presented, that council accepts the 2025 Q2 public concerns requests as presented in AIR 1223 as information, that council accepts the 2025 Q2 financial reports as presented in AIR 1224 as information, and finally, that council approve the write-off of $5,660.14 net in accounts receivable to bad debts as attached to report AIR 1226.
Excellent. We don't debate these items. Any additional comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? And opposed? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, now we have a delegation from Staff Sergeant Peden of the RCMP. If you want to just, yes, press the button on the microphone, then we're happy to hear from you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you once again for inviting me to I guess, speak or present or provide the good or bad news. Actually, the quarter one report for April 1st until June 30th is what I'm here to discuss, and quite honestly, it's been a really, really good quarter that I get the chance to speak to you about. For us, unlike some departments or some organizations, our quarters, our fiscal runs April 1st to March 31st. I know some are January to December. What's unique about us, though, when we're doing our reporting, this is Q1 for us, quarter one, April to the end of June, whereas in some reports you'll see it as Q2 based on that 12-month calendar, January to December. So if that comes up, I'll explain it a bit. For you. Excuse me. All right, so I did have a chance to submit this previously, and so it should be in the agendas there. I don't know if it's up for people to see or not anywhere, but so as part of their annual performance plan, which I had the opportunity to present here previously, and Mayor Hansen had participated in the creation of it with several other communities. We came up with our agreed upon priorities for the community being the crime reduction, so offender management, court order compliance, and our motor vehicle traffic, impaired driving, speeding, intersection safety, so traffic safety, and a third one being property. So this encompasses not only Sylvan Lake, but the greater area of Sylvan Lake, the rural area that we police. And rural property crime is a real concern for our rural residents. So predominantly thefts and break and enters, theft of vehicles, break and enters, theft of copper wire, so on and so forth. And then community engagement, youth engagement, increased visibility, which is obviously a huge piece of what we do. And I'll speak to that a little bit more here shortly. And then our member wellness is priority number 5. And that's an internal piece, but also external piece, given our members are dealing with individuals in the public who will be in a time of crisis. And so that wellness piece with our members often extends to the community when we're in those situations. So initially, priority number 1, which is crime reduction. So we have a program called Lighthouse, which is a offender management program. And what we do is when an individual is placed on conditions, enforceable conditions by the courts, we then do compliance checks for these individuals to ensure that they're abiding by the curfews. Curfews are predominantly the large one because we can go any time of the day in that curfew time. If it's 11:30 p.m. and we go back at 4 a.m., we'll often, we'll scatter it around so it's sporadic and there's no real schedule to it to keep them abiding by those curfews. It could be someone, if it's relating to a theft of motor vehicle or possession of stolen motor vehicle, quite often we'll see conditions not to be in a motor vehicle without the registered owner without their consent or in the vehicle with them, or even conditions imposed by the courts of not to occupy the driver's seat of any motor vehicle. And so those are types of the enforcement actions that we'll take is to ensure compliance. And then there's a whole host of different conditions that can be applied. No cell phones, no internet connections, not to associate with other individuals, witnesses, victims, co-accused. So yeah. So during that first quarter, our members conducted 101 Lighthouse checks or compliance checks in our community. With regular checks conducted, there'll be 1 criminal charge laid. So we're seeing success in that. We are enforcing where we have to enforce. However, in all our checks, they know we're checking, so a lot of the individuals are abiding by these conditions. We're seeing individuals from other jurisdictions being released into the community. Then probation will approve an address. So it's not uncommon for us to have individuals from across Alberta arrive here, and the probation file will be sent to Red Deer Probation, who then in turn notifies us of the release into the community or the approved address being in Sylvan Lake or outside in the rural area, and then we will take those on as well to ensure that they understand that those conditions are enforceable and we are here to continue to monitor. Overall, time-wise for those conditions varies depending on the time of year. July, August, a little bit busier, so we try to fit in during the members' routine patrols, or they're out in the rural area or do a patrol, they'll stop by and check. Other times of the year, they'll increase in frequency as well as our time to be more proactive or self-generate increases. So once again, having one charge for fail to comply speaks to the effectiveness of this program and the adherence to the conditions, which is great. Second priority being the traffic safety. And so in that Q1, we had 23 impaired drivers located and charged either criminally or under the provincial sanctions. How that's decided, I know I've spoke to it previously, but there's mitigating circumstances. If you're driving under the influence and there's children in the vehicle, it's a mitigating, aggravating circumstance. Therefore, it'll go criminal. If there's a collision, property damage, or injury, then we go with the criminal aspect, not just the provincial sanctions. And given the court date for that, how that looks, they go through that process. the provincial suspensions still apply to this. It's just, it becomes criminal versus a provincial matter. Excuse me. In May long weekend, they had conducted check stops all 3 nights on that weekend, and no impaired drivers are located during those that long weekend. So I believe that messaging in the media that you see out there, the communicating of, hey, we're out there, we're looking, people are aware. And those check stops aren't in one spot. We'll move them around sporadically to keep people guessing as well. And then additionally, 2 members of our detachment were trained during this quarter for both laser and radar speed measuring devices, which also increases our ability to enforce speeding infractions. 138 tickets were issued in that quarter, 53 being speeding related, also a couple cell phone tickets, a couple suspended drivers, 4 suspended drivers, all of which are taking some of the habitual individuals off the road. If the suspended driver who sees their vehicle for 30 days for first offense, second offense is 60 days. And so there is a cost associated to that, and further charges, which will lead to, we can charge under the Traffic Safety Act for drive while unauthorized or suspended, or we can move it to a criminal charge of drive while prohibited. Obviously that's elevating to that next piece there. Our rural property crime, we had 17 calls in that period for rural break-and enters, either to residence, business, or cottage. Two of the 17 resulted in charges being laid. 15 were insufficient evidence to proceed. 1 happened to be unfounded. With that, 8 out of the 17 were lease sites. So we're seeing that increase in copper theft. We do have lease sites that are targeted multiple times, resulting in $300,000, $400,000 worth of damage or property being taken. The security and deterrent measures being put in place for those lease sites aren't always there. They'll move cameras around from site to site, and so we're working with companies to help increase that safety piece. Crime prevention through environmental design. We talk about CPTED quite often, so we do offer that input as well to help mitigate some or reduce the targeting of those thefts. Community engagement. So I don't have the number here, but through Q1, our detachment was busy with school visits, tours. We had kindergarten, grade 1s come through, mostly in that June, just before the summer holidays broke. We have had attendance into the schools. I'll give a breakdown of it a little bit here. And so we're continuously looking for that opportunity to be engaged with the youth and the community overall. One piece that is quite notable is Sergeant Sexsmith, our 2IC here at the detachment, a very charismatic and capturing individual. He presented to the grade 9 and grade 10 classes at HJ Cody, based upon what we saw as a need with the increase of violence amongst our youth. And what he did is he tailored his presentation about what's important. Is it important now to partake in this violent activity, an assault or vandalism or what have you, because down the road there's going to remain consequences. If it's a criminal record, you're not going to get to travel. If you're looking at hockey or other sports, sports-related careers, we have organizations that are looking at your past behaviors about your character. And so he did a great job. Like I said, very, very captivating, and so it was a success. I know that having him up in the school also went a great distance for building a bit of that rapport. And then, of course, our member wellness, detachment wellness, we hold our monthly occupational health and safety meetings, especially when it comes to the impact of the workplace on our employees. We have 3 different categories of employees up in the attachment. We have regular members of the RCMP. We have public servants, both which are on our provincial side as well as our municipal side. And then we have municipal employees. So we do have a couple of municipal employees who are our support staff, administrative staff on our side, and then as well as municipal enforcement for the town of Sylvan Lake is out of that office as well. And so we ensure that all categories are looked after, and obviously occupational health and safety is an impacting piece of every job. I want to make sure that everyone up there is in the best position to be healthy, be looked after, and prevent injuries. We'll talk a bit about injuries here. For our line of work, we're seeing knees, shoulders, wear and tear, injuries from sudden movements when you're out in the field. And so we report on those, investigate those as well to see how we can minimize the risk as well. So, okay. So under community consultations piece here, these are community involvement. So once again here, April 29th, I was with the Summer Villages and talked about the performance plan that we built. Once again, the 29th, we were at the high school in response to increased school violence in the school itself. And you'll see a lot of these categories are youth or education sessions, but we are spending time in the community, the Tim Hortons Smile Cookie Day. And so our members are always out there active for that. I know everyone's got that in the agenda, so I don't know if I need to go through every consultation or every engagement piece, but there are some that aren't on here because we get going and then it's like, oh, I forgot to put that in. But our members are highly engaged and dedicated to the community that they live and work in. So, all right, scroll down here. Like I said, there's a lot of, during that period of time, I had the opportunity to attend the Diversity Awards and present an award to the Edmonton Police Service for one of the initiatives that they were nominated and had won for. It was a great opportunity, a great event, and strongly urge anyone who has the opportunity to attend. It's a great opportunity to see what's happening in our community and the greater Alberta, rural communities as well. It was quite impressive. We talk about crime reduction again as well. We here at the council meetings to present as well. Walk a mile in her shoes. I can go on and on about what these members are doing. So, from there, just go into the municipal operations, our human resource overview. So, at the Sylvan Lake Detachment, the municipal contract is for 16 full-time members, or FTE, or full-time to establishment. Now, right now, that is actually at 15 because the school resource officer remains a permanent vacant position. That request between both the town of Sylvan Lake and we're making that remain that way. Obviously, there's costs that are associated to it, and other pieces to it that led to it being held vacant for undetermined time. Currently, during this Q1, we had 11 out of the 15 full-time establishment members working. We had 3 on special leave and 2 hard vacancies. So special leave could include off-duty due to injury or sickness, suspension. They could be on assignment to another unit in the area, whatnot. And then hard vacancies are the, essentially, we don't have a body that's filling that position right now. And so that's changed a little bit, but like I said, at the moment, we still remain with 2 vacancies currently that are soft vacancies that are associated to the municipal contract. With that being said, we do have one member who is currently completing PDS, or Police Dog Services training in Innisfail. And upon his graduation, I believe September 24th is when he's done, there's discussion as to what his role is going to be moving forward, being that he will be transferred essentially to another place in Alberta. So we're working on that to see what's going to best benefit both the detachment needs as well as community needs, budgeting needs, because I know fiscal constraints apply for everywhere across the board, and so we're trying to balance that out. And down here, the next one here, the operating, municipal operations financial overview. So at the time of this report, the fiscal year to date for full-time members working was 12.65. I report this on this monthly as to what we have for our numbers fulfilling the contract. The multi-year financial plan and the fiscal year was budgeted for 14 full-time members. That's based on obviously the SRO position being vacant. That takes us on to 15, and then based upon a one member who's been off long-term, they budgeted that out of the budget there, so that's 14, and then obviously the member who's on assignment since April 1st, or April 13th, I guess, that's also not being paid for by the town while that individual's away in the training on assignment. So what that looks like, obviously the financial plan for 25-26 is 14. When you break it down, there is some cost savings that's being obviously billed or invoiced to the town as a result of that. Sorry?
Would you like questions throughout, or shall we hold them to the end?
Up to you guys. I'm here to.
Let Councillor Oosthuntje jump in.
All right.
It's good to hear the offset savings. My question is actually on, with the vacancies, is that creating any pressure on the detachment to have a lot of overtime hours or some extra overtime hours, or is it still within balance?
Yes and no.
Oh, okay, so there is some.
In regards to the budgeting, so my year-to-date budget for P4, which will be April to July, our year-to-date for overtime expenditures for the municipal contract is roughly, I believe, 22,000 less this year than I paid last year. And so once July, so for our budgeting, when I approve the overtime and the expenditure, the claim, it is then, it goes through our team system, and then it goes to our Northwest Region pay. Once that is then processed and paid to the individual, that's when it shows up in our budget. So when I first looked at it, I'm like, okay, that's not right, because I know I spent more than that in overtime for the month of July. So that, not all of that's come out yet. However, that's the way it was last year, and we're still $20,000 less spent this year than it was last year, year to date. So we're sitting really good that way. Obviously, with the enhanced schedule, enhanced budget, we'll see that also starting to show up on our budget for expenditures over the next month or so. So I believe August, the P5 budget, I will see an increase in all our overtime costs, but that will remain consistent over the last few years. Like I said, we are down compared to last year. Now, July was also, it rained on the weekends, so we didn't have the same draw or required for overtime members for that enhanced budget on those weekends. So it's quite a fluctuating demand and response. So additionally, when we talk about the budgeting, so if an individual is off-duty sick, or for whatever reason, for greater than 30 days, that's when the town is going to see that fluctuating. So it's 12.62 full-time to establishment. So the member's been off for 30 days or greater, then that's when the town is getting the rebate, essentially. They're not being billed for that position. It's a lot of navigating, but you know, we're there. The Q1, our quarter one billing that the town saw, I believe that there was a rebate, and I'm just going off the top of my head, after reconciliation for the 24-25 fiscal, I believe the first quarter invoicing was down about $220,000 from what the prescribed or the estimated cost was going to be. So that's the savings from last year due to some of those soft vacancies and whatnot. So, and moving forward, I'm foreseeing a bit of that happening here as well.
Dakin.
What's that?
Oh, I thought you were ready to ask a question.
I am not.
So, with that, with our detachment, we have a post system. So the rural component, the provincially funded positions is 7 positions, my position included in that. So I don't get billed to the town. However, we do have a couple soft vacancies there as well. And so it's across, it's not just the municipal contract, it's across Alberta right now. We're seeing that there's some vacancies that are happening due to various reasons out of our control, so.
I guess I do have a question around that, and I feel like I'm overly simplifying this, but I'm gonna take a stab at it anyways. I don't believe there's ever been a year that we have been there's always vacancies, and that is the nature of the work you do and to be expected. So to get the right size staffing for your municipality, is it a technique that sometimes you need to over-approve that number to get where we want? Is that something that's already taken into account for what is the right amount of officers for our area that we've rounded up to cover for, you know, I think there's always been that average of 2 vacancy at least probably for the last 10 years that I can think of. Sometimes that's been more, sometimes that's been less. Because to me, the question that Councillor Osnity asked was really about overtime costs. And mine is more related to not necessarily the cost, but do we have the service level that is needed for our community? And is this a numbers game that is just played across the board to achieve where we need?
That's a good question. Right now, based upon our calls for service, based upon the demand within the community, the summer that we had, summer's always our busy season, and just going off the top of my head, I ran the numbers here last week, but our July calls for service in 2025 compared to 2024 was down 100 calls for service, and then August was actually, when I ran it was 749 calls for service. Last year was 749 calls for service. Now of that, you're looking at roughly close to 200 self-generated traffic tickets, impaired driving. We include our mental health calls for service, which are time consuming. If we have the grounds to arrest somebody under the Mental Health Act, take them to the Red Deer Hospital, we will have members sitting there 8 to 12 hours sometimes, which is then we start to miss that member on the road here. The great part about where we're at is our overtime, people want to work here. And so if it is the enhanced budget or our boat budget for boat patrols, usually we can fill those, no problem. This year we had maybe 50% of those go filled. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't understand it, why it happens this way, but with that being said, July wasn't as busy as it potentially could have been because of our weather. So we had environmental factors that played a role into A, our overtime costs, and then B, the demand on our members. So getting back to your question, we've all been in some meetings where school resource officer would be optimal. However, some of the concerns that were raised by the town previously, filling that position, still remain there. And then the financial reward for that, you know, is it worth the money expended? Are the other partners, are they looking to allocate funds to also fund that position? Because while we have 2 school divisions, we have Christian Academy, we have schools, and what school gets the attention, if one school division will say, yeah, we'll contribute money, or if the county's going to contribute money, or how that looks, right? So there's a lot of factors there that are beyond my involvement, because there's like obviously the governing bodies will have to get together to determine it. Our population, and I got our CSI rankings for last year as well, I'll go over shortly, but our, 17,477, I think was the last population. That's what the CSI is based upon. So we are greater in population than Airdrie. Airdrie has a higher CSI ranking than we do. They have more members than we do. So there's, it depends what you look at. You add more members, you're going to generate more self-generated, which in turn can increase some of that as well. However, more members out on the road also deter crime. And so there's always the 2 ways to look at it. Ideally, I would, looking at the multi-year financial plan in principle, which forecasts for a member for the 26-27 fiscal to be added to our establishment, that was put off, I think, from last year through this year into next year based on our calls for service. But given the growth that the town's seeing, inevitably adding another member or so, I think will be required. And with that being said, we still are able to juggle our needs and our responses to get the job done that the community is expecting us to do. Does that answer it all? Or a lot of
Gets
circle
there.
talk?
I'll also just make the note for council, because Deputy Mayor Ostindi and I have seen the agenda preview, and the rest of council, we've only seen the first page, but the rest of council will receive that tomorrow. But that is a scheduled discussion item around the school community resource officer conversation for our next agenda. So we'll be having that conversation next week.
All right. Our calls, basically crime stats for April till June. What we have here is a 5-year snapshot. You can see the trends on it, and then you can see the change from last year to this year, and the change from 21 to 25. So offenses related to death, thankfully, we have 0. We've had 0 in the last 5 years, and so that's fantastic. A robbery increased by 100%, but that is 2 from 1 last year. So a bit of an increase that way. Sexual assaults year to date for that period, Q1 last year to this year, we're seeing a, it's pretty, sorry. You're seeing no change. It's still 4 reported. That's 4 more than there should have been, and that's what we're receiving for reports. Like anything, we also understand that not all of these events are reported to us. Other sexual offenses, 0 change, 2 last year, 2 this year. Assaults. This is interesting because our assaults, although April to June decreased, we have had an increase of assaults within our youth. Significantly in our youth. We're seeing weapons being used, we're seeing bear spray. Friday we had an incident where an assault took place and bear spray was deployed by one individual. Saturday down at the pier there was another bear spray incident. I can say that our members are doing a fantastic job, and several of the individuals, youth, have all been placed on curfew and are facing criminal charges for it. Prior to that, earlier in the summer, we've had several incidents where bear spray is being used in these attacks. Bear spray itself isn't illegal to use when you're hiking. However, under the criminal code, it is a prohibited weapon when it's used on a person. To purchase this, you have to give ID, and they'll take the serial number down, the place of sale, and they take that information. However, it is being carried by our youth right now, and it's escalated over from the end of school throughout the summer to now. It's escalating, and so it's not only a police issue, it's a community issue, because you're having bystanders who are being sprayed. You have, how do you approach this? There's a parental component, a community component. It's into our schools now, which also leads to other safety concerns, and our members are face-to-face with it now. So that's one of our concerns that we're still navigating, but it is quite a serious issue that it's going to cause, someone's going to get seriously injured because of it. I digress. Kidnapping, zero. Extortion, we're always seeing an extortion file. It could be the sextortion or whatnot, which is occurring. Criminal harassment has increased now. Once again, I don't have the exact stats on it as to the demographic or age category. However, online is a big part of it. The messaging, the instant messaging. Also, it comes through domestic violence situations where one party may be stalking, besetting, watching an ex-partner. It's across the board there. So, then other threats. Other threats, we get a lot of those calls for service. Some are unfounded, don't meet the threshold, however, still taken, because if it's perceived by the receiver as being a threat, there's still some elements of the offense that need to be met in order for it to lead to criminal charges. Property crime, actually I'll go back up. So our total persons crime increased 16% from 24 to 25, but still average it's down about 10% or 10 files per year. Like I said, we do have cause and effect for that with our youth is a contributing factor to this. Break and enter, they're down significantly for the quarter. Theft of motor vehicles has decreased. Theft over 5,000 increased. Theft under 5,000, shoplifting, whatnot, that's no change at 38 calls. Possession of stolen property has decreased significantly. Frauds, and I'll speak to that in our CSI rankings as well, but frauds are continuing. They're the grandparent scams. We have a lot of individuals who we get reports of the get-rich-quick schemes, bad investments, and stuff like that, that some borderline on a civil matter, but we take the initial file, we'll investigate it to determine if there's a criminal element to it, and then it kind of goes from there. Arson, mischief to property significantly dropped. From 2024, it was 60 calls for that Q1 to 29 this year, so, which is fantastic. And then other mischief, so that is increased. So that could be data, could be pieces like that, or not the standard property. So overall, we saw a 15% decrease from last year to this year for our property crimes. Getting down to the weapons, although zero change, we had 3 calls again this year for weapons offenses. Disturbing the peace has increased, or failed to comply breaches. We have 18 for the quarter this year, which is up 200% from the previous year. However, that's not just in relation to our compliance checks. We had the one in the quarter where our members are actually going out, finding somebody in a vehicle as part of their regular duties. You're not supposed to be in the vehicle, you have a curfew, and we'll lay those charges. Or we'll assist probation with those files as well. This year we had 3 files in that first quarter with charges for drug trafficking, resulting from traffic stop and a couple search warrants. A few of those are still before the courts. Our GIS unit is still on top of that. In fact, last night, one of our members did a traffic stop for a suspicious vehicle. The The driver was arrested for outstanding warrants, and we seized a amount of cocaine. So they're processing for possession for the purpose of trafficking. So, and that's just a suspicious person call. Individual not from Sylvan Lake, but came out here for whatever reason. So that's, when it comes to the violence and the drugs, we're still a really, really safe community because we're having people from outside the community coming out here and then going back, right? So, but our GS unit's on top of a lot of that stuff. And then just going from there, we got other provincial stats. We got Mental Health Act, we had 69 calls in that first quarter. Like I said, it's a big draw on resources with a lack of resources on the other end to take over, which is a larger issue across Canada and probably across North America. Any more questions?
With mental health, are we still on the joint team? I believe it's out of Rocky was the base for the PAC. Is it PAC team?
Yeah, our PAC, yeah.
We still do
So
that.
Constable White and the Alberta Health Services psych nurse, they actually still stop in our office. They have a few individuals they'll check on routinely. In their travels, they'll stop in and have lunch here. And so for us to tap into them, it's quite a great relationship where we need to, we can get a hold of them if they're on shift to come out or do the referral to them to continue the engagement and in some cases the care that the individual needs. False alarms, 31. Abandoned 911 calls, 17. Suspicious people, personal property, 73. So we're still in that somewhat normal realm there. Some increases, some decreasing. Spousal abuse, our survey code for spousal abuse, we're seeing 61 in that quarter, which has been consistent over the last 4 years, 63, 63, 60, 61. So we are not a lot of change in that portion as well. So, all right. And then this one is kind of, I dug it up here this afternoon and sent it in, so you haven't seen this yet. However, it is the 2024 Sylvan Lake Municipal Detachment Crime Severity Index, the one that everyone at Maclean's magazine always makes the most dangerous city in Canada, whatnot. So this year, our CSI ranking for the town of Sylvan Lake decreased by 5.2, I believe. No, just around 5. Yeah, 5.2% when compared to last year's CSI. So we're at 83.6. Previously, we were at 88.2. So we're trending down again. When you're looking at the graph, you can see that the last 3 years, 22, 23, and 24, we've been below 90. Previous to that, we were above 100. So I believe the national drop or the provincial drop was about 9%. The 2 years compared, so our efforts are being fruitful. Some of the main contributors to our CSI, break and enter being one. So 2024 with 57 offenses of break and enter, which is 13.9% of our CSI ranking. Fraud, 127 offenses or calls for service there, which makes up 13.1% of our crime severity index. The fact that fraud is what's driving a portion of our crime severity index, you can look at it as, okay, well, it's not a violent crime, but it's still the financial aspect of it, it's still driving that. Assaults are 10.8%, mischief 8.5%, and then we get into some of the smaller property crime stuff, theft of motor vehicle, theft under possession of stolen property. Criminal code traffic, 4.2%, so 108 calls or offenses, which make, so that's impaired driving, dangerous operation of motor vehicle in the criminal code, flight from police, those type of offenses. And then drug enforcement and trafficking, 10 offenses, number of offenses there, 3.9% of our CSI. That's what that makes up. Now with that, is when we are charging for drug trafficking or possession for purpose of trafficking, it's not just one drug. Quite often we'll see fentanyl or methamphetamine or cocaine or GHB or ketamine. It depends, and I'm not saying that's all there every time, but usually when someone's trafficking one substance, it's usually one or two substances, which also helps us make that case for possession for the purpose of trafficking, because you got a bit of a store open there, and so that's 10 offenses over, I think, 4 files, I think. So it's not bad. And other criminal code offenses. So 3 drivers that decreased our CSI from 2023 to 2024, where sexual assaults were down, 7 offense differential, extortion was down, and other criminal code traffic was down by 36 offenses. And then some of our increases are assault and then robbery. So, like I said, and so I provided this so everyone will have an opportunity to get it, and then you can go through it yourself to take a look. I believe about 147 municipalities, rural, provincial, or First Nation communities that are policed by RCMP in Alberta. Out of 147, I believe Sylvan Lake Provincial is 96. So we're kind of in the middle, which is good. The Sylvan Lake rural component, provincial component, is a bit higher. It's about 88. Sorry, I'll speak out of turn here. Yeah, it's about an 88. It's increased a bit from the previous year. Any questions?
Council, any additional questions? Was that, no? Councillor Stindy? I don't want to forget about you.
One question about false alarms. It's such a high number, although luckily going down. Must occupy a lot of time, and I know the fire department also has that issue too. Is there any education piece that's happening, or education piece that could happen, or god-awful fines, are people being, negligent, or what's the cause of so many?
Yeah, it could be a motion sensor, something trips a motion sensor. In my past experience, in some residences, there'll be a birthday and there'll be a helium balloon that's there, and the helium starts to degrade, balloon starts to fall, triggers a motion sensor, right? Could be a glass break, which could be contributed to a bird strike, could be the temperature change causing something. Like there's so many factors to it. I have worked in communities where if it's a one-hit alarm, we're not attending. It's not worth our time because it's a one-hit. Most alarms will have 2 or 3 motion sensors, door, back door, that aren't triggered. Likewise, the ones that we will often have key holders through the alarm company will say, yeah, the key holder's requesting attendance. Okay, we'll go. In some communities, we attend and it's a false alarm, false by attendance, then the municipality will in turn bill the property owner for that time, for that call. So depending on what it is and what the bylaw reads, there is an opportunity to help, I guess, self-regulate as well as user beware. So, I'll say this. Quite often we won't have property representatives attend, but they want us to attend. And so we get there and it's like, well, it's secure, but you're not attending to your property to ensure that it's secure. Then now the onus is on us, right? So it's a draw on resources, right? How do you engage that if, and I gotta be careful I say it, right? Because, at 4 in the morning there's an alarm call. Well, key holder's not available. Okay, what are we doing, right? We're going out sending a member out there, if it's a rural area or in town, or if it's a commercial business, is it an actual B&E or not? Right? And one hit at a commercial business could be an actual B&E. We attend, but a key holder doesn't. We don't know if someone's inside or not, right? So there's different ways to look at it. Some communities with a bylaw, first one's free. First time we attend, and it's false by attendance, okay, that's your freebie. Anything additionally after, then there's the billing that takes place. Majority of those are in places that have a municipal contract in place for policing. And so Red Deer, for instance, has that in place where the support staff will go through the calls for service, the alarms, they'll look at the history. Yep, the member attended, false by attendance, no key holder attending, and that's their third or fourth time. They will create the invoice and send the bill out to the property rep. So it's, and then the ones where they're actual valid alarm break and enter, there's no fee charged because we're going to be attending regardless if it's at that time or the next day when it's determined, right? So.
I appreciate when you brought up the increase of youth being an issue lately. So my question for you is, the criminal justice system doesn't seem to be working for the kids. So what would you suggest would work for the kids in our community so that they start to, excluding parents, so thoughts around, you said curfew, you guys impose a curfew on them if they get in trouble. And then I guess my follow-up to that is, would you be attracted to the idea of lowering the age that a criminal record sticks to 16? Do you think that that would have a big impact on the youth?
Sorry, the last part?
Lowering the age that the criminal record sticks, so like they're not a youth, so the actual, if you have a crime, you have a criminal record, you're 16, it actually sticks now for life.
So a couple pieces here. So first off, not all, I can't categorize all the youth as being our issue. It's a select portion of it that we are seeing consistently. And so majority of the youth in this community are fantastic, and they love the community and they're involved in the community. However, there's like all ages and demographics, there are a cross section that will cause us more work to respond. With that being said, youth justice, the Youth Justice Act provides for a curative approach to criminality or offenses being committed. They're youth. We know a male's brain doesn't fully develop till 25. So there's that opportunity to have that community involvement for a curative purpose. What happens to an individual after we're done with the charging, we provided our complete investigation to the Crown, what happens from there in the justice system is separate from us. I can't dictate what happens there. However, with the curative portion, we know Youth Justice Committee, and we know that the extrajudicial measures, they are a powerful tool. Once you have victims with an individual, that emotion it can be quite significant, and they can put the action consequence together and how it was more than just that moment, how it's, in some cases, a lifelong impact. However, we have offenses that can't go to youth justice. So a primary designated offense, secondary designated offense, so your homicides, sexual assaults, some of your assault, aggravated assault, assault with a weapon, are in that primary to secondary designated offenses. And with those comes weapon, discretionary or mandatory weapons prohibits, and it's not in the public interest for it to be diverted. Now, however, for instance, bear spray incident, charges of assault with a weapon and possession of weapon dangerous purpose, since you have it for this purpose, we're sending those right to court. We're not going to divert those. However, if the Crown and defense and that decide that that's the appropriate manner, then that's obviously we'll follow that suit. So there's hits and misses with everything, right? I do have faith in our justice system, and I do believe that it is more than just a policing issue. I believe that there's a community involvement piece that needs to be implemented. What that looks like, if it's a parental or kinship or community mentors or whatnot, but we're not going to police our way out of it. Criminal record. So under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, if you're charged with an offense as a minor, that's on your record. At the age of 18, depending on the date of that offense, it will be sealed. However, and this isn't common knowledge, however, under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, if you are convicted of an offense within 5 years, that will then crystallize or solidify that record. So that now becomes your record. So if you have, say you're 16 and you have something happen, then you're 19 and you have another offense that you're convicted of, now your criminal record is solidified. So although it's a youth conviction, it's still on your criminal record. Now, when you're 30 and they're taking your criminal record into consideration for a sentencing if something else should happen, they'll look at that youth, but it's like, okay, that was 15 years ago. We'll move past that too. But so it does stay. It's just a matter of there's some of those different timelines that come into play for that as well.
Thank you.
I didn't either. I think we just all learned something new here. Is there any additional questions we have, council? No, I just want to thank you so much for being here to answer our questions and prepare this presentation. Yes, please.
One more tidbit of information. So the e-scooters has been a hot topic off and on. In the last 3 weeks, we've had more collisions, hospital stays. And these are 18 plus individuals, not necessarily on the ones that are rented, but e-scooters in general. So we're still seeing a significant traffic safety issue with those. And I know we hear the good and the bad about it, but it's something that I think council still needs to be aware of moving forward with other options. Just like I said, we've had, they're not regulated. There's no insurance on them. And we've had some go through a stop sign and they've hit vehicles, not vehicles hitting them. And so now we've got the traffic collisions, which also now results in property damage, insurance costs when one individual driving their vehicle has insurance and the individual on these prohibited mini vehicles as defined by the Traffic Safety Act running around. So I just want to make sure the council is aware of that because we're still seeing that those occurrences here. And moving forward, I can provide more information or stats for council when considering other options. So
I do have a follow-up to that. I think e-scooters are such an interesting thing because they have come up just in the last couple of years, and every year they've increased so much in frequency of use, especially those private ones that don't have a lot of regulation around them. Are there any municipalities that you know of, and I don't expect an answer on the spot, but would love if you do, if you could share them back with administration that regulate those in a way that's working and keeping it a safe option? And I suspect the answer is there's not a ton.
I don't
because it's fairly new, but I guess if you do hear of any, my ask is if you could share that back with us, because I think us and many other municipalities are probably all having the same conversation in the last year or so,
Yeah.
but no one probably has created something well first. So maybe some digging on our end too. Councillor Payne.
I had just a thought come to my head. The other day I was traveling down 47th at a very legal speed. And the e-bike that was pacing me was going, I'm just going to say he was doing about 50, and I wasn't. there's got to be a point where that becomes an issue as well, I would think.
So what type of definition of e-bike? Is it the ones that we see, like the e-cruisers, whatever, where people are pedaling? Or is it the one that's just completely powered by battery power?
I don't know. As I was going by, I was quite shocked that he wasn't wearing a helmet and that he was passing me.
So e-bikes that aren't the ones with the pedals to get going, and they're not battery assisted, fall under the prohibited mini vehicles. And so they are actually prohibited on the roadway. Going back to the scooters, even bicycles for that matter, when you're on your bicycle and you're coming up to an intersection, you follow the same rules of the road as a motor vehicle. If there's a stop sign, you have to stop. If there's a crosswalk and you're riding your bike across, you're not a pedestrian. Same with the e-scooters here, we have them blowing stop signs, failing to stop signs through through crosswalks, making turns in our traffic. And so there are traffic offenses there. I said, trying to catch them sometimes is a different story. So all those, yeah, there are safety precautions in place. However, we're seeing more of those e-bikes come up, definitely.
I have a slightly adjacent question, but a conversation that I've had on my children's parent council recently, or school council. When I was a kid, there used to be a bike rodeo that happened every year at my school, and the RCMP came and taught the rules of the road. Are there any great programs like that that still exist to help teach youth those road rules, whether it's on their bicycle or their e-scooter?
We can look into that. We can do that.
Okay. Thank you. Council, do we have any last questions? Is there anything else we need to hear about?
No, I think we're done summer. Our members have taken a sigh of relief. It was a good summer overall. We were down, like I said, numbers wise, but those are popping back up now, and it's morale is still great. Members are loving to be here in Sylvan Lake, and we're doing well. So.
It's great. Well, I'll just extend our thank you on behalf of council. Appreciate all the work that you and your members are doing in Sylvan Lake.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, with that, we're at about an hour, so let's take a 10-minute recess, and then we will resume into the rest of our agenda. Thank you. I hope that's okay. We're all here and ready, so let's get back to it. We'll come back in at business item 7A, the commercial building for offices and personal services use. Mr. Symington, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, Council. So this is for Council, consider development permit 265-2025 to construct a commercial building for offices and personal services located on 3 lots, 30, 50, and 70 Pelican Place, with a relaxation to the maximum ground floor height from 3.7 meters to 4.6 meters. The property is bounded by 50th Street to the west and Pelican Place to the east, and access to the site is via Pelican Place. As the proposal is within the 50th Street Direct Control District, Council is the approving authority. It falls under the 50th Street Urban Design Guidelines, subareas G and J. These encourage ground floor commercial development with opportunities for commercial, office, residential uses located above the ground floor. The urban design guideline also contains setbacks for the front, side, rear yard, and site coverage, which the application meets. These guidelines also contain building height requirements. So there is a relaxation request for the ground floor. The maximum story height is 3.7 meters and the proposed story height for the building is 4.3. There are no concerns with the relaxation as it is minimal and will not impact adjacent properties. There are also building design guidelines. The intent is to provide for street front commercial uses that utilize 50th Street as the main entrance to each business. The applicant has indicated that a sidewalk will be constructed in front of the building to access the building from 50th Street and has accommodated access to the rear of the building from 50th Street with the use of stairs and a ramp. The ramp does encroach into an adjacent property and therefore an encroachment agreement would be required on the adjacent property. The guidelines also indicate that building materials should be of high quality and contribute positively to the street and other development. The use of stucco on the ground floor is not permitted, or also indicates that vinyl siding, plastic, plywood, concrete block, darkly tinted and or mirrored glass, and metal siding using exposed fasteners shall not be permitted. The applicant has indicated a preference for burnt orange, yellow metal paneling, fiber cement plywood in white, ruby dusk and midnight oil as the facade for the building. However, the applicant is proposing black corrugated metal on the south and north ends of the building, and there is a concern with this siding being used on the north and south sides, as these facades will still be visible and should be treated as principal facades as well. Parking and access. The development does meet the required parking stalls and is actually in excess of the parking and also meets the handicap parking stall requirements. There are 2 stalls that will use the adjacent property for access, and therefore a joint access agreement will be required between the 2 properties. There is also a shared approach, and this will require a joint use agreement as well. At the time of writing this report, no landowner comments have been received. There were no comments from external agencies except TELUS indicated a right-of-way to service the development. Public Works indicated a stormwater management plan, site grading plan, and servicing and utility plan will be required. Economic Development has no concerns. Fire has indicated the driving lanes on Pelican Place with parking on both sides make the road impassable for fire trucks. Planning does not have concerns with the proposed development as it meets the intent of the 50th Street guidelines. The relaxation to the height is minimal and will not impact surrounding developments. The parking stalls exceed the minimum requirements. However, we do recommend that the same facade used on the east and west elevations be used on the north and south as well. So staff is recommending that council approve the development permit on 30, 50, and 70 Pelican Place for the following reasons. The development meets the intent of the 50th Street Urban Design Guidelines. The relaxed to the height is minimal, and that the applicant provides updated drawings indicating the same facade that is currently being used on the east and west sides also be used on the north and south sides of the building to the satisfaction of the development officer planner.
Excellent. Council, do we have questions to start off with? Councillor Stindy?
Just want to two questions. One, to understand the same facade treatment statement. Am I right to assume it means, you know, we're not getting involved in color choices and that, but we're asking for the same material as an exterior? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So we would like to see the same facade sidings being used on the east and west, being used on the north and south as well, instead of the corrugated metal.
Okay. And my second question doesn't affect my decision about the development, but since it's brought up in the report, the concern about being impassable for fire trucks, that is the common public right-of-way off the property. What are we doing as a community, or from the fire department's point of view, what are they doing to make sure it is passable? Or is there no right there? I'm assuming it is a public right-of-way, Pelican Place, that it is officially a public road. Or is it just an internal commercial, call it a co-op road?
Through the chair, so it is an actual town roadway. I'm not sure what the standards were back when that subdivision was approved. However, at least we require on-site parking for that area. So with this development, at least he exceeds the required parking. So hopefully that'll help alleviate some of that.
So I'm thinking as a point of concern to admin then, that there should be a follow-up to make sure that we have a passable public road so that fire trucks could literally come and help us when we're in our greatest need. So and I don't know what it looks like, but that is independent of my decision for this development. It's not the ownership of any one lot there. It is our concern as a community.
Any additional questions, Councillor Payne?
Is the facade treatment an aesthetic thing, or is it a structural thing that we're concerned about?
Through the chair, so it would be an aesthetic thing. It's got nothing to do with the structure.
So we just want it to look pretty.
Yes, that's correct.
Can I ask, I'm not sure if this is appropriate. I'm curious about the cost for this facade treatment. Are we unduly asking the developer to spend more money because we want it to be prettier than corrugated metal, which is perfectly fine? The entire Nextsource Center is built of it. Sorry, I don't know who to ask that to.
I'd say if they're, the maybe cost portion could be directed at administration. The opinion on the aesthetic portion of it, we can debate that shortly.
Yeah.
Let's get a motion on the floor.
I'll make the motion if.
Great. That'd be
Okay.
fantastic.
I move the council approve development permit 265-2025 for a one-story walkout commercial building for the offices and personal services use located at 30, 50, and 70 Pelican Place, as presented in AIR 1222, with a relaxation from the maximum ground floor height of 3.7 meters to 4.6 meters, subject to the conditions as listed in the package. However, I do want to just say the likelihood of wanting to amend this is very high because I do not think it's right. So 1A4, I think if you're using appropriate materials, appropriate building materials, the developer is trying to have this aesthetic be pleasing. I don't think it's our place to say, I want it as pretty as the front and back. So I don't think that 1A4 should be included in the motion if that's something that council is open to.
I tend to lean to, it's hard to measure what is pretty or what is aesthetic, but we do have these concerns in other parts of our town, the cottage area being one of them, where we ask for a certain level of aesthetic. And it isn't, to me, it's not just about being a tourist town, because we're about ourselves as residents as well, is that we have certain corridors in our community where we all, it's the viewscape of our whole town. And so I'm not opposed to having a requirement that says we need the sides of the building to look like the front. And when we say it looks like the front, that's why I asked to clarify, you know, we're not dictating colors and all that. What we're dictating is that if you're building a building like this and it's in the public view, especially in a location like that, you want all sides to look kind of sharp. And as much as, you know, we have other buildings in our town that have different choices of material, they have a certain look for their style of building, and they are not office centers. That is literally a recreation, curling lounge, et cetera, et cetera. So we do have different standards in different parts of the town. And personally, I'm one who would lean towards having more aesthetic control in our town. Even where I first moved into town, Lakeway Landing, there's aesthetic controls. I had to build certain fences, and it was the developer that put those limits on me, not the town, actually. So I'm one who speaks to that, you know, idea of raising the level of aesthetic and keeping the quality, of course, high too, but aesthetic alone, I'm in favor of it.
Councillor Mearns.
Just for clarity on the motion, has that 1A4 been removed basically with your motion? Just wanna.
No, the motion is as it is in the package, but I am very much in favor, once the conversation has gone around the table a little bit, in proposing an amendment to have 1A4 removed.
Okay, I would support that amendment as well. MPC just approved on Tuesday last week of a similar structure on Lakeshore Drive where this concern came up with the corrugated metal. The developer brought an example and showed the treatment and everything else, and aesthetically, it looks amazing. It's not, you know, doesn't look like, you know, galvanized sheet metal or a grain elevator. Definitely aesthetically pleasing, and I think that, you know, when we, you know, if it was plywood on the outside, I would have a concern. We're seeing more and more buildings with this, you know, not only in our community, other communities. I think it's great. It's the longevity of it. I think it's great. So I would support an amendment to removing that 1A4 for that.
We've heard from 3 councillors. I'll hear on that specific one, and then I sense that Ms. Devlin might want to chime in, but let's hear from Councillor Rilling, Dakin, and Parsons on that topic.
I really like the metal. I just think it modernizes it, and so I don't have a problem with removing that as well.
Councillor Dakin.
I also have no problem with that. As somebody who has to clean a lot of buildings, I know that that cleans really well. However, I am interested in what Mrs. Devlin has to say.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what Ms. Devlin has to say as well.
Very good. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify for council that the concern isn't with the metal material of the siding. As Mr. Symington did mention, there are architectural guidelines for the 50th Street Direct Control District that did outline certain materials that were and were not allowed. However, it's not the metal itself, It's the color in this case that doesn't match the rest of the building. So the condition is that it be made to match the rest of the facade. So if they chose to use the red or yellow material that's being utilized, which I believe some of it is a metal material, we are completely fine with that. And as per section 7.6 of the land use bylaw, which is building orientation and design, 7.64 states all sides of a building exposed to a highway or public road shall be treated as a principal facade and finished in an appropriate manner to the satisfaction of the development authority. Although it's not directly facing the road like it does on both the east and west sides, it is still very visible from 50th Street. And for that reason, we felt like it was appropriate to have it upgraded and matching the rest of the building. If it was much closer to the adjacent buildings on each side without, you know, up with a 4 or 5 foot setback like we see in many buildings, we may not have asked for that upgrade. However, it will be very visible to all the traffic driving by, which is the reason for the condition.
Councillor Martins, and then Payne.
Maybe I'm wrong, and I very well could be. I thought it wasn't a color issue because Councillor Stindy asked that exact question. It wasn't a color issue, it was the metal issue. So now I'm confused.
Well, maybe through the chair to Councillor Mearns, there may have been a misinterpretation of the question. I think there was, he had asked if we were dictating the color, to which I think Mr. Symington said no, and my interpretation was Mr. Symington meant he could choose the red or the yellow color to be replaced with it. But if the question was, do we just have an issue with the black color being placed on the side of the building, then I guess the answer is yes, we felt it should match the rest of the building.
Councillor
So
Payne and then Dave.
our apologies if that was not clear.
So just to understand, the materials are the same as the east and west. It's just the color's different.
So through the chair, so they're proposing corrugated black metal on the north and south sides. So what we're requesting is that the facade on those sides would match the same as what's existing on the east and west.
So I'm still not clear. We just want the color to match the east and west.
So the applicant on the east and west side has indicated metal siding as well. So it's not the actual, it's not the metal, it's just we're asking that they use the same metal and the same color as they have on the east and west side. Sorry, the metal paneling.
Councillor Dakin.
I vividly remember coming to council when I first came here in 2014, and I asked for my building to be black, and it got voted down. I always wondered why everyone hates black. But in this situation, living what I went through, I think black is classic. I think black is timeless, and I think that metal is a great material, and I'm sorry, but I like black. And if we're the authority on that, deciding the black, I think black's beautiful and classic, especially because if it's metal, it won't fade as much. And if an investor's making this much investment, I'm okay with their design choice for black.
Just to be clear, you're okay with the different colors on different sides?
For sure.
Councillor Stindy.
Yeah, I still don't want to debate the color, and in fact, I don't want to debate the use of metal either, because I've seen residents, especially in Whitehorse, one of my last visits there, I was really noting how often metal, corrugated metal, was being used in residents, and I think it looks awesome. And so I think I'm supporting what administration is pointing out. It's not about metal or not metal. It's not about red or black or green or blue or whatever color. It's about the front looking like the sides. So if you use reds, blacks, and blues on the front, use them on the sides. Or if you're using a certain architectural design in one area, you use the same kind of design in the visual parts of the building. And that's what the requirement under the 50th Street is all about. Is that when we look at that building, whether it's on the side or straight on or the other side, we're seeing an architecture that ties it together, as opposed to noting the front of the building as in, oh, that's cool. Now that's definitely a side of a building. and that's a different feel. So that's, I support that notion, if I explained that correctly.
Councillor Payne.
I'd just like to amend my motion. I've never amended my own motion before. I'd like to amend my motion if I can and remove 1A4.
As that is a substantial change, I'll look to Ms. Phillips. Should we be voting on that amendment?
Yes, I would vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion.
Main motion. Great. Let's, Councillor Payne's motion on the floor is, his amendment is to remove item 1A4. Is there any further debate on that specifically? Graham, sorry.
Well, I'm of the same as Councillor Cindy. It's an aesthetic thing. It's not a cost thing, so it's a choice of that's why we have planning and development, and there's a reason for it, and it's part of the requirements of the development, the entire development, Pelican Place. So if they feel it is, I feel that they know that they know what should be appropriate and not. So
I'll just pause if there's any further conversation around that. I'm pausing extra because I'll tell you, I really don't have a strong opinion and also don't want to debate color, but I do think it does make sense to have all four sides look consistent with each other. So that's where I struggle with this. But with that, we've got no further questions, so that makes me have to come to a decision here, and that's okay. All those in favor on the amendment to remove item 1A and opposed, and that is carried, so that item is removed. Let's go back to the main motion with that item removed. Do we have any additional debate or comment? I do, and maybe I have obviously, I was a bit surprised to see this, really. We went through so much work to see the direct control district removed in our downtown, and part of that, I guess, didn't include the conversation further up the hill. So when we were talking about this discussion and reading the report around the 50th Street direct control, I thought, oh, that's interesting that that wasn't included in those greater conversations that we had. Because I think there really was that agreement from council that direct control is a designation we're looking to get out of. And if this was not direct control on this item, I don't believe council would have been seeing it because it's a fairly minor variance that's being requested. So maybe just a future conversation around the potential of carrying that removal of the district into all other areas it might affect. And I think this is the only other area. I'm not sure. Is there any other direct control anywhere else in town other than up 50th?
Yes, Your Worship, there are a couple of small parcels that are direct control, but this is the only one that's left that is of significant area. And the only reason it wasn't included in the changes that we recently made this year was because the 50th Street Area Redevelopment Plan needs some updates as well, which we did feel would be rushed. We wanted to provide adequate community consultation before those changes were made, so it remained.
Any additional comments on the application before us? We have a motion on the floor by Councillor Payne. All those in favor and opposed, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, move along to Housing Accelerator Fund Dollars for Doors program.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I'm here to present for Council's approval the Dollars for Doors program. The Dollars for Doors program is an initiative funded through the Housing Accelerator Fund to support the creation of 30 new affordable housing units. Housing affordability is increasingly becoming a challenge for many households in Sylvan Lake, especially moderate to low income households earning less than $65,000 per year. This initiative is an important step to make private and nonprofit housing projects that offer affordable housing options more feasible and attractive. So before I get into the program, I'd like to note an error in the background section of my report. So the total number of housing units that the town is committed to is 575, not 555, as noted in the report. So this difference is the additional 20 apartment units that the town committed to in exchange for the additional funding we received in March this year. The number of affordable housing units CMHC requires is 5.21% of 575 to make the 30 units. I wanted to just note that, as I'm sure maybe my maths in the report didn't make sense. So we've designed the program to be flexible, allowing the town to offer various funding amounts to eligible applicants based on the merit of each project. The intent here is to offer larger grants to projects that can help the town meet its 30-unit commitment, but also make consideration for smaller projects like small walk-up apartments or row house developments that want to provide just a few units at an affordable rate. So the program is open to a range of applicants, including private and non-profit developers and other community groups. The application process follows a call for proposal framework where each proposal is reviewed and evaluated against established criteria before being presented to council for final funding decisions. Administration presented the draft program to council last week at last week's Committee of the Whole meeting to gain feedback on two aspects of the program before it was finalized. The first being an increase to the maximum per unit grant from the original $15,000 per door, and the allocation of additional half funds to support the higher per unit grant. Administration has incorporated council's feedback into the program criteria, where the program will offer up to a maximum $30,000 per unit grant based on how well the proposed project meets the program's objectives. Those applications that score higher will receive higher levels on funding based on how affordable the units are, how long they will be maintained as affordable, proven financial sustainability through partnerships, demonstrated community benefits, and incorporation of innovative designs that support cost savings through energy efficiency. Any multi-unit development project that provides rental units at an affordable rate to moderate and low-income households are eligible to apply. Specifically applies to developments issued building permits between February 1st, 2024 and January 15th, 2027. This ensures that all projects approved during this period have an opportunity to designate some of their units as affordable. This will give the town a greater chance to fulfill the commitment to achieve 5.21% of all permitted units as affordable. The increased maximum grant offering will require additional half funds, and administration recommends that the $540,000 in half funds received this spring as a result of the additional initiative to reduce parking for apartment developments be allocated to the Dollars for Doors program, bringing the total budget for the program to $1.08 million. As with all HAF initiatives, the Dollars for Doors program will be reviewed on a regular basis to assess its effectiveness. Council retains the discretion to discontinue the program and reallocate any remaining funds to support other housing-related initiatives, including a large-scale affordable housing project should one arise. Following Council's approval of the program, administration will develop an applicant guide and promote the program through all available platforms, including town websites and social media. Administration will continue to work directly with applicants who have or will be applying for permits for multi-unit projects. We will also reach out to nonprofit groups who attended the Housing Summit and expressed interest in collaborating on an affordable housing project. So this concludes my presentation, and the is before you in your agenda package. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions? Councilor Oostende.
Just one question on the thinking behind having council approve permits when they come in rather than being a standard application process that's approved by admin.
Through the chair to Councilor Oostende, we're not asking to approve the permit, we're asking you to approve the funding for the project.
To clarify then on Page 53 talks about application process, number 6, application process, and the final bullet is council approval, final decision on the amount of grant awarded for the project, because with each project potentially going to get different levels of grant. And I was thinking, I don't want to be involved in that as a councillor. And so just clarifying then, the project, does that mean the dollars, because this is the program Dollars for Doors, I was reading it as each project would be needing council approval then.
Through the chair, Councillor Ostendi. So the way that we're envisioning this to work is we receive a proposal. Administration will review that proposal against the criteria, the weighted criteria that's in the program criteria that we're presenting to you tonight. We would then bring it forward to council to go through how it was evaluated and graded. And then we would make a recommendation for the funding amount, in which case council would approve that.
Okay. Follow-up question. With a large project, you know, having maybe even 30 units in it would be quick and easy. I'm just wondering, would we anticipate having many small units, like, or a single person, or sorry, a single project, you know, a single unit, a single door, in other words? I just don't want to get into that as a councillor.
Through the chair, to Councillor Ostendi, absolutely. We don't expect a lot of uptake for smaller applications for this program, just simply because the amounts just are not enough to, you know, be the make or break point for projects. So. Okay,
thank you.
Additional questions? Someone like to make a motion? Councillor Mearns.
Make a motion the council approve the Dollar for Doors program as presented in AIR 1228 and authorize administration to begin implementing the program, and the council approve an additional $540,000 of the HAF funds to be allocated to the Dollars for Doors program.
Excellent, thank you. We'll open it up for comment and debate. Seeing none. Motion's on the floor. All those in favor? And opposed? That is carried unanimously. Just a note for anyone listening in, this was an item that we did have on last week's Committee of the Whole agenda, which gave us the opportunity to have a bit more of a detailed discussion around it, which often leads to a little bit less discussion when it comes time to vote. It's not that we're just rushing through, so appreciate that. Next, we'll move along to item number 7E, the 2026 Fortis Electrical Franchise Fee. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Hansen, and good evening, Council. So with this report, we're just looking for Council to determine if they wish to change the electrical franchise fee rate with Fortis for the 2026 fiscal year. The current rate for the town of Sylvan Lake is 18%, and the report is some comparison communities, and we compare quite well with them. So also the resource impacts, I won't go into all the numbers, but there's the projections, assuming the rate stays the same for this fiscal year and for next year. The process, if council so wishes to choose, is outlined there in the report as well. So because our comparables are very much the same as where we're at, administration is not recommending a change at this time. We typically bring this with the ATCO one, but that came at the last regular meeting of council, just for a different process for that one this year with the renewal of the agreement and just the timing. So just looking for council to determine if they wish to change the electrical system franchise fee rate with Fortis for the 2026 fiscal year.
We'll start with any questions. Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion? Councillor Payne, I think? No? Sure. You were leaning in like you were ready.
Well, I was leaning in because my wrist is sore, and I was reaching my
Sorry about that.
mouse.
No sudden movements around
But-
here. I'm happy to call on you.
I am feeling collared. Here we go. I move that council confirms the electrical system franchise fee rate of 18% with Fortis Alberta for the 2026 fiscal year as outlined in report AIR 1225.
All right, council, let's open it up for debate and discussion. Councillor Dakin.
Okay, I'm ready for this one. Okay, so I appreciate the 4 towns that were brought forward. However, of the 157 communities, the average rider is actually 8.66%. And if you remove all the zeros of all the other communities that participate, it's 11.7%. I know that this has become a necessity for our finances because it's how we balance some of our needs. And my argument is that, and I've researched all of the provinces and territories, and Alberta is very unique in our municipal franchise fees in that most other utilities are centralized. So Alberta has a unique setup for how municipalities get their money. My ask for this is, because I'm seeing from 2025 to 2026, there is a slight increase if we left it alone at 18%. And so I'm just asking if we could just come back a little bit to 17.5%, so there's not a big impact on us. And I know Darren is not going to be happy with me saying that because I know we need to, we have a lot of costs coming up. We have a lot of costs. But I also want to see our utility bills go down a little bit for our town. So that's my argument.
I also just want to mention, and then council, we should discuss that, at just our recent committee of the whole, council did pass a motion to do some work on this coming up. I don't remember the time frame. I'm hoping someone else might be able to trigger a little bit more of what was contained in that motion. So we do have some upcoming, a deeper dive conversation happening on this. Ms. Phillips, are you able to help me out?
We are planning to bring it back for early in the new year to discuss at a committee of the whole to potentially prepare a resolution for fall convention next year.
So to do some larger provincial work on this?
It was more, the initial discussion was around GST, but it could definitely grow from there.
Absolutely. And I'll just add my 2 cents and then go to Councilor Mearns. I think that's really where this conversation needs to happen, is on that greater level. I think it would be very difficult for us to do a transfer of this onto a municipal tax bill. I do think that this absolutely isn't the right formula, as you pointed out, and that's a greater conversation, but it would be really tough to take this money and then add it on to a municipal tax bill in the same conversation, and that's essentially what we'd have to do to remove it from this. Councillor Mearns.
Yeah, I think we should be advocating through Alberta Munis to the province and getting things changed. At our level, it's a steep climb, so I would be in favor of going that route than trying to resolve it here.
Dakin, and then Payne.
Yeah, I'm not trying to resolve it here. I'm saying that if there is an increase happening, leaving it at 18%, could we come back a little bit? And just, you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm pointing out for this one, is saying no increase at this time. And if anybody has an appetite for it, a little drop, even 0.25, like a little win, a little baby win.
Councillor Payne.
Aren't we already at 18%? We are, because we're asking to stay the same. Okay, my understanding is we were at 18%, we're asking to stay at 18%. So we're not increasing. Okay. Yeah, when we have this conversation fairly regularly, just about every year. Well, it's every year. And when we have this conversation in the past, we've had conversations about, we want to move this out of being these taxes on our bills and move it on to where it should be, and that is in property tax. But to do that, that's a 15-year process. You couldn't possibly do this, move this from where it is onto a property tax bill. You would double property tax bills, nearly in some cases. So I think, when I look at what is being charged. And, you know, if you go through this and you take out the communities that are lower, in most cases, those communities are either summer villages or communities that are so small it's insignificant. The communities that are the size of Sylvan Lake and in a lot of cases bigger than Sylvan are all either at that 18% or in a lot of cases higher. I don't like this. Frankly, I don't like franchise fees at all, whether it's, you know, this one or the other. But the reality of it is, unless we want to move this directly onto the tax roll, we don't really have a choice. Like, it's one of those things that, you know, without this, we simply have to move it onto someplace else. So whether you want to look at this as property tax A and property tax B, that's the reality of it, is it has to be, the money has to be collected somewhere. Otherwise, we run a deficit in our budgeting. We don't have the money to be able to do the simple things that we need to be able to do.
Mr. Moore and then Councillor Ostindi.
Thank you, Mayor Hanson. Just wanted to clarify the difference in revenue there. It's not because of a rate change on behalf of the town of Sylvan Lake. It's a projection given to us by Fortis based on growth in the community and any projected rate changes they have, because our rate is based on the distribution fees, rates set by Fortis. So if those go up, our revenue goes up as well. So just want to clarify that.
Councillor Ostindi and then Mearns.
We're stuck with a strange system given to us by the provincial government. And really this is, we call it a franchise fee, but it's really their property taxes. And when I go to McDonald's, for instance, and I buy a hamburger, nowhere on the bill does it say franchise fee from the town or property tax bill from the town. Like, I buy a hamburger for $5 and it's just a hamburger for $5, but I know it includes the property taxes that McDonald's pays. But unfortunately on our bills, when I buy my electricity, I'm being told, oh, there's this franchise fee and the damn town's collecting it. But nobody says that on my McDonald's hamburgers. So I find this very frustrating, this marketing game we have to play. And so really it's a property tax on this utility that's in our town and occupying land. And we are in a predicament, especially in this day and age. We know our reserves are not super high. And so we have to be careful with wherever we're getting our money, and the provincial government is forcing us to pull all these different pots, especially now that they've dropped how much infrastructure they support. You know, by Alberta Muni says $1 billion across the province. And I know in the case of Half Moon Bay, because I saw them on the list with 0%, they provide very few services for the taxes they collect. And the sentiment in their community is to provide no services effectively. And they provide so few services and collect so little money that they actually got a handout from the provincial government of hundreds of thousands of dollars to hook up to the regional wastewater line. Otherwise, they weren't going to join it. So we all have to take responsibility as municipal politicians to collect the money we need as a community to exist. And this is one of these frustrating things, that we're trapped in this weird structure, and it drives me nuts. But the number one thing that drives me nuts about it is that we're paying GST on it, and that we have to get rid of, and that would truly drop 5% tax on it, and that I really want to pursue. And I thank my colleagues and Councillor Dakin for bringing that up in the past too.
Councillor Mearns.
First off, my apologies for taking us on a rabbit trail, because I'm the one that really started that. And not understanding Councillor Dakin's question. So I hear everyone's comments and my own, but really the question at hand is, you want to keep the rate at 18% or increase it, or to Councillor Dakin's decrease it, right? So my apologies for taking us down that road.
I just want to add in the comment of, every year this is so hard for me because it comes out of our budgeting cycle. And is there any way to align this, to have these discussions, even if it's for a year ahead of time? It's really hard to make a financial decision outside of that cycle without considering what that cuts, what that changes. But of course, we have to make this decision before we ever had a budget conversation. In the springtime, or I guess late winter, can we have this conversation and make the motion for the 2027 fiscal year ahead of time? To help get these in alignment, even if it's giving them very advanced notice of our rate choices. Because to do these on a one-off is, yeah, it's just out of scope. We don't have all the information that we need in many ways.
Do you want it? I think that's a great discussion to have at the budget discussion. And also, if Mr. Moore has more to add, I think we could definitely even make a motion along those lines, but knowing that if the information changes significantly, it may have to be reconsidered. But I don't see a reason we couldn't make those decisions at that time, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, we could certainly, have those discussions, I guess, and change the timing. The reason, it comes before council at this time, preempts the budget process is because if we want to change rates, to be effective for January of the following year, there's a timeline that as outlined in the report for that to happen. And so that's kind of why we do it now. If council wishes to, say, lower the rates and increase taxes to compensate for that or not, the effect really is on the capital budget. So the capital budget, of course, is required to be approved before the end of December. So it becomes kind of a timing thing to balance a decision with this, with your budget and your capital budget. So, but doesn't mean it couldn't be done.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
My English teacher math is not always that good. But I'm looking at it and thinking a half percentage point is about $56,000. Yeah? So $56,000 is about a third of an interest rate, or a third of a percentage rate of a tax increase. So, am I adamantly opposed? Well, I don't like spending money, but I also don't know where we're going to suddenly find $56,000 in a budget that has so little in resource and so little in reserve. So I'm not opposed to keeping the status quo.
Thank you for that. And you brought up a great point earlier also. It would take 15 years for us to start to claw this back. So why not start now 0.5% at a time? And yes, it would be double the house tax if we removed this and we're taxing people. And I know I say transparency because most people don't know what a utility franchise fee is or where it's going. I know we do. So all I'm asking is that we reduce this to the growth of anticipation for our community piece by piece to slowly get our utility bills down. That's my only ask.
Crickets. There's literally, I can hear crickets in here. Does it matter at this point? Are we really doing such a service and taking $56,000 off, taking a 0.5% off? What's that going to equate to each family that pays a bill in this community? So it does. I would love to explore the pieces to this that are longitudinal pieces, like the pieces going forward. Do we want to look at on a yearly basis moving this back, scaling this back so that we move it from where it is to where it should be? We are a month away from a different council sitting at this table. Is this something that you want to decide for today? I'm with you, Megan. Mayor, I hate that we're making this decision now. I hate that we're making this decision when this is not during the budget process, when we can see with a greater amount of clarity.
If I could just jump in, one thing you said about removing this, to be clear, if we remove it, it just means we're adding it to another pot. This isn't a discount for any family. It would just be a movement. But what I heard is we have to make this decision by the end of the year, and we have to also make our capital budget decisions at the end of the year. Could these be made at the same time? Although it's not within our full budgeting process, there is time scheduled within our capital budgeting process. And this really does hinge on that exact budget, no different than we look at the entire budgeting spreadsheet and we play with the numbers. Could that not happen within those decisions if that's the budget it affects? Mr. Moore.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mayor Hanson. So if we delay a decision on the franchise fees, we can't delay a decision on the capital budget. But if we delay the decision on the franchise fees, they don't guarantee a time frame when the rate change will take effect. So if we don't do it by the deadline or the timelines that's given to us, typically if we do follow those timelines, it will be January 1st. But if we don't, it could be anywhere from 3 to 6 months after that. So it makes it hard to rely on that revenue stream when we don't know the rate change and when it's going to be.
Sorry, just to be clear, what is the timeline that they provided us? Is it year end or is it sooner than that?
It's sooner than that, yeah. It's,
okay.
Yeah, so I think the date is not there, but I believe the notice has to get to them by about the 1st of November, if I remember correctly, roughly. Sorry, I don't have the exact date there, unless it says that.
So they're asking for us to confirm our decision, council's decision by November 7th.
Thank you. So if I can just finish the thought. So because our capital budget is funded by half of the franchise fees and 0 taxes, if council wishes to make a switch to that, it could affect the outcome of the capital budget, is I guess the point I'm trying to make.
Councillor Payne.
So we're taking from Peter to pay Paul, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think with this, the bigger questions that need to be answered are the ones for the Alberta Munis. So rather than try and, because this is really going to be an appearance thing. It looks like we're trying to help people, but really all we're doing is saying, you know, we're going to move it from here and put it over here. So I think leave it the way it is for now.
Just a question, and then I'll go to Councillor Dakin. If we don't give them an answer by November 7th, does the existing rate remain and it's just the change that would take a while to come into effect? Or is it a 0 charge and could be a 6-month delay on that?
Sorry, I don't know that for sure, but I think we, you know, whenever council comes to council at this time of year, we always advise them either way, like if there's a rate change or no rate change. So I'm, you know, because the agreement is in place, I'm assuming that if we didn't, you know, if we didn't notify them, that they would, I mean, the rate would just stay the same.
Councillor Dakin.
This isn't taking from Peter and giving to Paul, and I'll tell you why. It's because there's going to be a growth, and I'm saying let's, for 2026, this money that we're deciding on is for next year, correct? This percentage rate is for next year, 2026. So I'm saying let's decrease it by the amount that we're gonna have an increase, and then therefore, you're not taking from Peter, you're not taking from, or giving to Paul, you're able to go back because there's a set increase that's happening with the growth of our community.
So with that being said then, sorry, with that being said, will we automatically start our tax increase at 0.33% to cover the $56,000 deficit?
Ms. Phillips, did you have a comment on that?
Sorry, my mic was just.
Mr. Moore.
I would just, I didn't put it in this report because it was in the ATCO one, but just to reiterate, you know, discussion about Peter and Paul, I guess, but, you know, franchise fees are paid by every property in town. So every property consumes natural gas and electricity. So it's spread throughout the town evenly, if you want to say that. The minute you shift that away to property taxes, churches, schools, and the town itself does not pay property taxes. So you're shifting that burden from a larger number of properties to a smaller number of properties. So I don't know who's Peter and who's Paul in that situation, but I think that's something to keep in mind.
Okay, I think, do we have any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. I did not note who made the motion. Councillor Payne, thank you. We have a motion on the floor to keep the rate at the existing 18%. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor and opposed, and that is carried. All right, we'll move along to the item number 7G, organizational review and chart update and rescind our organizational chart policy.
All right. So I'm going to report on this one. I have reported this one previously and closed, but now that we're prepared to implement the changes within the town, we're ready to make the report on it publicly for transparency. So as you know, just over a year ago, the GM positions were approved as new positions for the town. When I started, there was some conversations around whether it was the appropriate structure for our community at that time. Brought it to council, and there was support from council to use some funding from savings in a vacant position to bring in a consultant to do an organizational review through interviews with our staff, assessment of our documents, our plans, our policies. Within this policy, there were several recommendations made. Just to highlight some keys that are within this report, they did recommend that we eliminate the GM roles, the general managers. One was currently vacant. The other position is being shifted to an executive director of strategic initiatives, with this position continuing to overseeing communications, tourism, and economic development. We're also shifting legislative services under the senior administrator. We're adding a second manager in recreation. That department is one that has grown significantly, and there was definitely a need there for more supervision. We're merging recreation and wellness and community connections, and we're working towards the merging of planning and development and public works, but this will happen probably later in the year once we've worked out some details there. The budget for the saved GM positions will be used to fund the new executive director position, the manager position in recreation, as well as a few other shifts within the organization review that were recommended. And I just want to make sure, again, there was transparency on that fact, because there is no immediate budget impact because we're using those savings, but it is important that council's aware of that shift. So we're recommending, currently there's an organizational structure policy. We're recommending that council rescind this policy as we will be implementing an administrative directive, since council's role is the approval of the budget. And so we are recommending that with the expectation that as the CAO, I will be bringing forward, I think an updated org chart for information for council is important, as well as significant changes, which you would see anyways through the budget process, but ensuring that transparency is still there. And then to accept the information on this, as the update on the org review as information. I will also point out that all of the org charts, the updated org charts, are in the agenda for councils as well as the public's information. And we will move forward with implementation and these components immediately.
Thank you. We'll start with any questions from council. Sure, Councillor Rilling.
I make a motion that council repeal the following organization structure policy L002015, and that council accept the update on the organization review and budget impacts for information.
Excellent. Comments or debate, council? Seeing none, all those in favor and opposed, that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next, we've got a number of items, correspondence and information items attached. Do we have any questions on those? I have one around the fire calls after our conversation with our staff sergeant today about alarms. I also note they are alarmingly high on our fire department stats. I know we have a mechanism in the bylaw that does allow fines of repeat false alarm customers. And my question is that utilized?
I will have to get you that information.
Excellent. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. Seeing just on one category there, the year-to-date total being already 70 calls, and then there's a number of other alarm calls, does make me think there probably is close to, and actually I see the other categories, 100 to 150 alarm calls so far year-to-date, which is quite substantial in our resources. Councillor Ostindi.
We use the word fines, but really it's a fee for service. And when we're setting up an alarm and hooking it up to the RCMP, we should expect that if we're going to need their false services, we need to chip in a little. And so even though we call it a fine, it's really a fee for service.
Absolutely.
And I do like this idea that, we have an educational piece to it too, so that, because I know when a school I worked in paid $500 for a false alarm, it hurts. But it's a fee for service that we unfortunately triggered. But giving people a break is a good thing too once.
Certainly. Thank you. Any additional questions on those correspondence and information items? Seeing none, CAO report.
All right, so the CAO report is included in the agenda for your consideration. Any questions? Just to highlight a few from each area. Community services, I kind of like the story on the snake rock. So the naming contest received 176 votes, and we now have Sylvia as our snake rock. So. Parks and Protective Services, there was a question asked recently about statistics around the campground. So we had 631 nights booked, including 211 single night stays. So seeing some good use at the campground. MPC, there was some information here just regarding an approval of them for a mixed use building located at 5049 50th Street. So there's information. Concrete work on Herder Drive and Harrison Road is complete. Paving will be completed by September 10th, and then line painting and signage will be completed in the next few weeks. At the Next Source Center, the curling rink installation starts on September 11th, heading into the fall season. And we have our Flannel and Feast event coming up at Lakefront Park on September 20th, as well as National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th. So any other information or clarification, let me know.
Excellent. Any questions, Council? Seeing none. Move along to Council requests for information and updates. Councillor Dakin.
Question. I had a lady message me, and actually I didn't know if I should just put it in an email, but I'm just going to bring it up here. She's on Broadway Rise, and they're concerned about a sidewalk on the Broadway Rise side. If there is one, how do they get one? There's a lot of kids traveling around there. I do have an email also that I'll share with you for her, but she's very concerned about the lack of sidewalk for the kids around there.
Right by the school there. Yeah. Any additional council information items or updates? Council Parsons.
Just a comment, just about the outstanding Culinary Festival. Just kudos to the organizers. It was a truly awesome event.
It's neat to have the road closure back for it. I thought that was great. All right, we've got a couple notices of motion for us tonight. One is mine, and it is up for decision tonight, Council. My motion is that Council direct administration to bring forward a report to facilitate a discussion at a future committee of the whole meeting regarding the potential to reduce, streamline, or eliminate parking minimum requirements within the town of Sylvan Lake. That discussion shall be scheduled no later than March 2026. Council, I'll open it up to any questions or comments or debate. Councilor Oostende.
The definition of parking minimum requirements, what does this exactly mean? We're not telling people you have to park for a certain minimum time. What are we saying?
No, talking about minimum parking spaces in developments. And
Okay,
I'll
minimum
say,
parking spaces, okay.
my interest really is in some of those commercial developments, but I think it's a part of a greater conversation that we should have all at once. So just requesting that really we have the time to facilitate that discussion and see where council's will is on that topic. Great. All those in favor? And opposed? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Parsons, you have a notice of motion for review.
Yes, move the council direct administration to explore options for a reimagined beach ambassador program to be considered through the upcoming budget cycle. The program would be designed to partner with the Sylvan Lake Volunteer Center to direct community involvement in the program and enhance positive public interactions while increasing service levels on the waterfront. Administration is requested to bring forward a report with program options, potential costs, and partnership opportunities for council's consideration.
Excellent. That is not up for debate tonight, so we will discuss that at our next meeting. Next, we'll move into a closed meeting. Councillor Mearns.
Make a motion the council move to a closed meeting to discuss personnel information, and this item shall remain confidential pursuant to Section 17(1) of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, RSA 2000, CF 25, and Section 192(2) of the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, CM 26.
Excellent. All those in favor? And opposed? That is carried unanimously. Council, let's take 10 and then Who would like to bring us out of camera? Councillor Rilling.
I move that the closed session concludes and council reverts back to the regular meeting of council.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Rilling, do you have another motion for us?
I do. I make a motion that council pre-approve the inclusion of funding in the amount of $85,000 for the 2026 spending budget to support the implementation of Phase 1 of the organizational review, as discussed in camera.
Excellent. Council, do we have any discussion or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? And opposed? That is carried unanimously. Council, we've reached the end of our agenda. Have a good evening. Our meeting is adjourned.